How's it going, everybody? It is I, PC, back with another video. So, I want to talk about Dark Side of the Ring. This is a documentary series made by Vice, where they talk about the dark past of professional wrestling, all the tragedies and deaths that took place. They have been doing this for a while now, and they covered a lot of wrestlers like Bruce Brody, Fabulous Moolah, the Von Erichs, a lot of these tragic things that happened in professional wrestling. And it's a really good documentary series that I highly recommend you guys to go check out if you haven't already. But if you are a professional wrestling fan, then it is a must that you watch these, because you're going to love the way that they conduct these interviews with professional wrestlers and people that have worked in the business and know about these particular subject matters. And you're going to love the reenactments, which have a dreamy noir feel to them. I like the way the camera work is, where it pans out to the person that is interviewing, and then they introduce themselves and everything. It's really cool the way that they have the camera work and everything, and it's a really good documentary series that I highly recommend, and it's probably one of my favorites now. But with that said, season 2 premiered 2 weeks ago. They aired the first part of the Chris Benoit tragedy, which it's in 2 parts, and they uploaded both parts on their YouTube channel. So I highly recommend you guys to go check it out if you haven't already. But this is going to be my review of this, and we're going to go over this documentary and discuss about Chris Benoit. So for those of you who don't know who Chris Benoit is, he was a professional wrestler for WWE. He was considered to be in high regards to his peers, one of the best wrestlers ever. But unfortunately, in 2007, he committed a double murder-suicide. He killed both his wife and his son, Daniel. And then, after he killed them, he hung himself. And it's perhaps one of the most tragic things to ever happen in professional wrestling history. So, part 1 is basically them going over, Chris Benoit's career as a wrestler, his upbringing. He was inspired by the Dynamite Kid. That's where he gets his influence, and he basically emulated his style. And Chris would compete for Stampede Wrestling, which was a Canadian promotion. He'd go on to Japan and then to WCW, which is where he would meet his woman, Nancy, his wife, or that's what she was named, was Woman. She would become his valet because Kevin Sullivan was booking for WCW at the time, and he decided to put his wife with Chris Benoit because he was married to Nancy at the time. And they go over some of the Kevin Sullivan stuff. We don't know if it's true whether or not he abused Nancy or not, but they basically talk about that. They try to get Kevin Sullivan to be a part of it, but he basically denies, he denies the allegations that he abused Nancy and all that stuff. So we don't know the full story of that. But nevertheless, Chris and Nancy, they get married. They have a son named Daniel. David Benoit is actually in this. He gets interviewed. There's Chris Jericho, David Benoit, Chavo Guerrero, Vicky Guerrero, and Nancy's sister, and Jim Ross and Dean Malenko. They also are interviewed for this episode, or I guess these 2 episodes, because it's 2 parts. But like I said, the first part is just going over Chris Benoit's career, his relationship with Eddie Guerrero. That's another thing I want to talk about, because that really touched me. because, I've had friends that are that close to me where I would just tell them anything. And Chris and Eddie, they were so close together. They would talk about their marriage problems. They clicked instantly. But then the documentary goes where it hits you. They talk about the death of Eddie Guerrero, which back in 2005, I loved Eddie Guerrero. He was one of my favorite wrestlers to watch because he was so entertaining. And it friggin' shocked me when I heard that Eddie Guerrero passed away. I literally cried for a week at school, and my friends were hugging me and everything, saying, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. He's in a better place." And that's what made Eddie Guerrero special, was the fact that he could make you hate him and that he could make you love him a second later. Like, Eddie Guerrero was that special of a talent. And they go on to talk about how Eddie's death affected Chris, and his behavior started to change, and he just lost it. He lost passion for what he was doing. And then they go on to talk about the unfortunate double murder suicide. Chris Benoit, he killed his wife and his son, Daniel, his youngest son. The sad thing about that, to me, is not just, how much it impacted the wrestling business, because it almost killed the wrestling business, but how great of an impact it did for David Benoit, which he talked about, how his father's actions, affected him, in his life. He was, chastised, saying, "Oh, your father's a murderer," and all that stuff. And that's just awful. It's an awful thing to go through, and it's not right. Like, David Benoit had nothing to do with that, and he shouldn't have been picked on like that. And I know I'm sort of skimming through some things, but I just would rather you guys go check out the documentary itself. It's not glorifying a murderer. It's basically them just stating what happened, and, that's it. That's really it. It's a really touchy subject because we look at stuff like that in such a way nowadays that it's really hard for us to have an opinion on it. Like, do we, look at Chris Benoit, the person who is going through so much, who has, lost his best friend? Should we feel sorry for him? And, we don't know. We don't know. But there's one thing I definitely do know. Like, I do know that what he did was awful, and there's no forgiveness for that. There is no forgiveness for taking, your own family's life. And a lot of people were shocked about, Chris Benoit when he did that. Even his peers were shocked, because they even stated that Chris has always been a quiet, reserved type of person, not showing a lot of emotion or, or anything like that. Like, he was the type of person that you could go to and, put all your trust in. You would leave your kids with them. Like, that's how much they trusted this guy. And a lot of people are trying to push for Chris Benoit to get inducted in the Hall of Fame. I think you people are crazy if you honestly think that Chris Benoit deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, there's a difference in looking at his career with a positive light and looking at the person. People, we need to separate that distinction. Chris Benoit as a wrestler, I loved him. I mean, I loved watching his matches. My favorite Chris Benoit match was him facing Chris Jericho in Japan. That was one of my favorite Chris Benoit matches. Also, my other favorite was him versus Kurt Angle on SmackDown. Great match, great chemistry. Kurt Angle just jumping off that off the steel cage like that, almost fucking killing himself over that. It's crazy, but it's a great match. I can look back at Chris Benoit's career and say that he's one of the best wrestlers ever. But after, you know, what he did, what he did in his life, I can't respect that. I can't help but feel disgusted and sick in my stomach about that. So, that's just the way it is. But nevertheless, I want to know what you all think about the documentary, if you've seen it. If not, then check it out on Vice's YouTube channel. They have both parts available. Tomorrow, I believe they're going to be airing the New Jack episode. If you guys want me to continue covering this, let me know in the comments section and we'll discuss it. I might do a live stream or something on that, because doing these editing type of videos is kind of tough. But if you guys want to see more of this, then let me know in the comments section, and let me know what you guys think about the whole Chris Benoit situation. If you are, well aware of it, let me know in the comments section what you think. That's really all I have to say. If you haven't already, subscribe.